Hi there, and welcome to the pilot episode for the Cleveland Studio for Music and Arts. My name is Dennis Cole. I'm the executive director. I'm also on the music faculty at Ashland University, where I teach courses in music history, music appreciation, and world musics. Now, the goal of this video is to begin a long series of videos featuring music from around our world and devoted to a large range of topics, from music appreciation to a discussion of musical styles and music history, to organology and other aspects of world music. In this first episode, we're going to look at this instrument right here, commonly referred to as the mouth harp. Now, to begin, let's focus on its organological features. Now, if you're familiar with the Saxon hornbostel system, you'll know quite readily that this is a idiophone, more specifically a lamellophone. So what does that mean? An idiophone means that the entire body of the instrument resonates to produce sound. So there are 7 subcategories of the idiophone family. So you have percussive idiophones like a cowbell or a gong or a xylophone or a marimba. You have concussive idiophones, like your hands when you clap, or cymbals. You have scraped idiophones, like a wiro, in which there's a perforated edge that you use a stick or a hammer or something to then scrape. You have stamped idiophones, like the jingling Johnny of Turkish Janissary bands, military bands. You have what are referred to as friction or bowed idiophones, like the glass harmonica, or the musical saw, for instance. You take a regular tree saw and you get a violin bow and you bow along the edge, and it becomes a friction idiophone, or a bowed or rubbed idiophone, as it's sometimes referred to. Next, you have a shaken idiophone, like a gourd rattle, which is a common feature in traditional African drumming or in Latin American music as well, which is derived from African diasporic traditions. And lastly, we have what are referred to as plucked idiophones, or more specifically, the proper name is the lamellophones, because there's a lamel or a lamella, which is a tongue, that when plucked causes the entire body of the instrument to vibrate. Now, again, this is referred to as a mouth harp, so that designates that the other feature of this instrument is that it is to rest against the oral cavity. That when done so, the oral cavity then amplifies the sound of the instrument. Now, organologically speaking, what's the function of the mouth? It's designated as a sympathetic modifier. And what does that mean? We have to keep in mind that the fundamental vibration musically occurs with this instrument here. And it does create a definite pitch, but obviously it's limited in its sound production and its amplification. So when placed against the backdrop of the oral cavity, you now have a feature of that. You now have an ability to amplify and project the sound forward. This is very common use for this instrument. And I mean, I say common in that if you look at another lamellophone like the Imbira Zavazimu from Zimbabwe, there are 22 tongues that are connected to a plank of wood and then inserted inside a hollowed out gourd. And that hollowed out gourd is a sympathetic modifier in that it helps to amplify and project the sound outwardly. Now, I say sympathetic in that you can actually manipulate the vibration with the mouth, in that by changing the size of the oral cavity, you can actually manipulate the definite pitch that's produced here. But we keep in mind that it's a sympathetic device, much like sympathetic strings on a sitar or sympathetic gourd rattles on an African xylophone, in that that's not the primary vibration. It's simply an added feature to the instrument, which is why like I said, so what you're hearing is the vibrate. You're hearing a vibration that's occurring in sympathy to the primary vibration. So So you're able to produce the foundation of a pentatonic scale by altering the size of the oral cavity. The next thing you can do is trigger and manipulate the overtone series as well. By almost whistling, by doing a light whistle or by manipulating your tongue, you can create and manipulate the overtone series, and that's an important feature to this instrument. Now, when we talk about this instrument, we have to keep in mind the cultural considerations. This instrument is found all over the world. It comes in a variety of shapes and sizes and material types as well. This one here was given to me by a faculty member at a local university when he traveled to Southeast Asia and went to Vietnam. So he purchased this in a street market in Vietnam. Now, you find this all throughout Southeast Asia. You find it into Oceania as well. And it's a common instrument associated with animistic cultures. If you're not familiar with animism, animism fundamentally is a belief that all animate and inanimate objects have a spirit inside of them. So everything in the natural world can be explained by way of spirit connection. So all living creatures, humans and animals and plants, have spirits. There's a dimension of ancestral spirits, the spirits that have passed on to the next life, the next realm. And in some unique animistic cultures like Haitian voodoo, there's a precursor to the living world in which there are the unborn spirits. Also natural events such as fires and hurricanes and thunder and floods, all of this can be explained by way of spirits as well. Now, why is that important? Because instruments in animistic cultures carry with them spiritual powers and the ability to communicate. With that in mind, we must designate that this instrument is used in certain animistic cultures for surrogate speech. If you're familiar with surrogate speech musically, most people, their minds are taken immediately to African cultures where drums, because of the ability to create a high pitch and a low pitch, can mimic not only the syntax, or the rhythm of the language, but it can represent the tonal structure within the language as well. This, on the other hand, more disguises the speech. It's used in the recitation of poetry, and it's used to communicate within and between and amongst spiritual dimensions. So you can communicate through the instrument. So oftentimes the recitation of poetry is given spiritual power by performing it on an instrument that they believe carries with it the power to invoke spiritual energies or the ability to communicate between or through spiritual dimensions. If you go back to the Imbira Zavazimu in Zimbabwe, again, another lamellophone, the one that was placed inside the gourd, we find that that has the same basic principle. It's an animistic culture in which that instrument's used to conjure up spirits in the midst of spirit possession rituals. This is utilized, like if you look at the Susap, a version of this in Papua New Guinea, they believe that it can connect to the power and the power of love and the energy of love, and when it's used to recite love songs and the recitation of poetry within the courtship ritual, it almost works like Cupid's arrow, that it has that sort of feature to it. So again, the mouth harp, it's a simple instrument. It's an idiophone, it's a lamellophone, it's a plucked idiophone, again, placed against the backdrop of the oral cavity. It becomes a quite interesting instrument. It's not simple. I mean, it's simple in its construction, but it becomes somewhat complicated in its performance technique, and that's all derived from the cultural considerations. All right, if you enjoyed this video, if you want more, subscribe to our YouTube page, the Cleveland Studio for Music and Arts. Send us suggestions on the other instruments you might want to explore, or if there are musical styles out there that you're interested in learning about, or if there are composers or musicians or performers. Like I said, we're wanting to put together a long series of episodes in which, in time, we can explore all sorts of musical traditions from around our world. Thanks.